You may recognize the name Bong Joon-ho as he has directed quite a few films already. Many of them I haven't actually seen, but I have seen Okja, a film that incredibly underwhelmed me. I did not really get that much out of it. It was kind of cute, I suppose, but it wasn't really all that special. It kind of went in a pretty cliche direction, to be honest. But other films such as Mother and Snowpiercer do have quite a lot of backing behind them, even though, again, I've never actually took the time to sit and watch them. But Parasite, however, is the latest film from Bong Joon-ho, and this one seemed to be the big deal. It's really been a long time since I remember a film not even being released having so much buzz, hype, momentum behind it. It's crazy to see. Especially considering, as I've already said, there is a bit of a backing behind his other films, but there's not a huge amount of people talking about how amazing they are, but whereas this one seems to be the one. And you can absolutely see why, because in comparison to Okja, this did not really resemble anything in that film, and it felt like a completely different director to me anyway. So Parasite is a film about an unemployed family. They're all living in something called a semi-basement, which is a fairly common living situation for people in South Korea. There is a mention of just general basements in the film, as one of the characters points out that they are designed in houses for any emergency in case North Korea ever invades South Korea, so that they can, hide away and keep away from all the dangers. But a semi-basement is different. This is essentially a poverty-type living situation. This is for people who are really living in the slumps, living, in really poor conditions. And so their plan from there is essentially to infiltrate a rich family's home by, working for them. I think the plot is rather outlandish, and to be honest, so far in what I've seen for the praise of this film, I haven't seen anyone really point that out, but it absolutely is outlandish. Without going into too much detail about the ins and outs of the film, because I think it is actually a better film to go and see without knowing too much about what the critics are saying, especially with the amount of hype. You can easily get sucked into hype sometimes, and then when you go to see the film, you're like, well, this wasn't that good, so now I'm disappointed. But I would, rather you try and see the film as opposed to watching the review first. But since it is a review, I do have to kind of go into some of the details, and the ways they go about getting into this home, the ways they, go about doing things are kind of ridiculous, but it somehow works. I think most films that try this type of thing become too absurd and too stupid to the point where you can't just sit down watching it. I think Sorry to Bother You from last year was a big example of that for me. It just felt all a bit too hectic and ridiculous for me to take seriously. In fact, Mother by Darren Aronofsky was another case of that for me as well, where there's this, greater conceptual, higher being that's layers upon layers of the meaning of the film. It just becomes so ridiculous that you can't stay invested in the plot, and the plot itself actually isn't ever that good. But a good film would be able to, use this as an advantage and make the film flow really well, and Parasite is exactly that. The film keeps you invested in what's happening by having great characters, a great direction too. The directing in this film is really fantastic, I think, and it just heightens the acting, I think, as well. Some of the acting performances in this are really, really good. Even the side characters that are just kind of there, not really essential to the film, are still really, really well performed. And there are these little tiny nuances within some of the characters as well that are shown early on in the film, which then become kind of important later on. For example, the mother of the family that they infiltrate is very soft, is very welcoming, is very nice, and you can see that throughout the film as she continues to kind of remain this gullible character who isn't really aware of certain things. And because of how they, introduce her, it makes sense that some aspects of the film go in the direction that they do. Or similarly with the father of the family, who Throughout the film, mentions a few things that kind of give off this sort of pretentiousness about him, this kind of classist attitude. You know, he's rich, he looks down on poorer people, and again, that kind of becomes a bit important as the film progresses. Without spoiling anything, obviously, I know it's a bit of a vague statement to make, but again, you'll see what I mean when you watch the film yourself. And the film takes a few twists and turns that constantly keep you on your toes. You're not exactly fully aware of how the film is going to end. And by the end of the film, I was quite satisfied, actually. And I think the ending was really smartly done. And the ending stays consistent with the characters in the film as well, because as I already said, the film is a bit outlandish at times, but that's because the characters are pretty outlandish and they make plans that are a bit far-fetched, a bit stupid. They make decisions that are incredibly stupid, and then by the end of the film, it ends with, again, another plan that's being made that you're just a bit like, well, let's see how this goes, but obviously we won't see how it goes, but you can get a picture in your mind thinking, yeah, this isn't going to work out the way they want. Which is funny because the father of the family committing the crime does say at one point in the film, if you make a plan, life never works out that way. And it's kind of funny to see how that literally plans out throughout the film. The last act of the film is probably the most crazy 20 minutes I've seen in film all year, to be honest, but I think again it makes for a satisfying ending, and it completely works, I think, for the film. And it kind of had to end the way it did as well. I mean, when you're sitting through the film, you're not entirely sure how it's going to end, but you kind of have to think, yeah, this is the only way it could have ended. So yeah, I really did enjoy this. I had a good time watching it. Like I said, there are a few plot conveniences throughout to kind of get characters from one place to another, or to get characters into a bit of an intense situation. Like a few of those do crop up here and there, which does make me wonder if it's going to harm my second viewing or anything like that. But for now, I think it's a great film. Going to go 8 out of 10. In fact, I'd probably say it's the best film I've seen in 2019 so far, so that's pretty high praise, I guess. Hopefully you get as much out of it as I do. Thank you for watching my review. Let me know if you've seen it and let me know what you think. And yeah, have a good day and goodbye.